the khutwat or the khutuwat of Shaytan, of Iblis. فَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطْوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ. Do not follow the progress of Shaytan. Khutuwat is progress. Shaytan is the first progressive because he will take us by degrees. And the thing about most progressive ideologies is they're constantly shifting the goalposts. They never tell you where they're going. And so, for instance, Obama could be against same-sex marriage in his first inauguration, and nobody called him a bigot. But then after he had the second, he said, no, he was in support of it. And suddenly everybody has to be in support of it. And if they're not, they're a bigot. So this is how Shaytan takes people by degrees. Now, when we look at the inner states of people, we see that most people are not well because they're not in a state of submission. And again, submission to the limits of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And those limits were placed upon us for our own benefit. So we know, for instance, Unwin, who wrote a book called Sex and Culture, I think it was published in 1934. I mean, this was an Oxford scholar who studied all of these different cultures, and he found that whenever a culture unleashed the sexual promiscuity, that it was gone within 3 generations, which is about 75 years. And so if you think about the 1960s being the beginning of that, we're coming to a close on that. And he said he could not find any exceptions to that. So people say, oh, why is religion so obsessed with sexual morality? Because maybe, just maybe, that's one of the ways in which we maintain the health and solidarity of our society, because family is the foundation of society. If family breaks down, that's the fundamental unit of a civilization. If family breaks down, society breaks down. And so we can't even use words like illegitimacy anymore. They're unacceptable words. There's no shame anymore in any type of sexual behavior. And so that's an area of hudud that Allah has given us, saying, do not transgress those limits because there are repercussions that are going to affect you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need any of our worship. He doesn't need us. All of this is from the bounty of Allah, His fadl, and because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shared with us this extraordinary experience of existence and consciousness and made us in that metaphysical surah, in that metaphysical image that He has given us. وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. And so He has enabled us to know Him through our very creation. And we're unique in that. Outside of the jinn, we're the only species that has free will to come to know Allah, and we know Him through how He has created us, because we're hearing, we're seeing, we're speaking, we have will, we have all of these qualities. We have existence. It's contingent, but it's existence nonetheless. So He's given us all of these attributes in order for us to understand something about His attributes. And so when He calls us to silm, to this peace of submission, He's doing it for our benefit. Imam al-Ghazali said that if a sultan had a minister, like a ruler had a minister, and that minister wanted to get close to the sultan by moving his finger in the privacy of his home, he said that would be ridiculous and demeaning for the sultan. And he said, well, the same is true for our worship for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is less than that in relation to the king and the minister. So we have to understand Allah does not need us. We need Allah. And He's promised these things out of His fadl. That's only out of His fadl. There's no obligation on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أوجب على نفسه. He has obligated to Himself out of His fadl. So we have this extraordinary religion that is calling us to enter into this state of submission, and then to work on our hearts. And this is why tazkiyah is central to our tradition. You cannot have outward peace if you don't have inward peace. And there's all these people that clamor for peace, but because they're not peaceful in themselves, because they lose their tempers, they get angry, they're greedy, they're selfish. All of these things that you see in the macrocosmic world are reflections of what's happening in the microcosmic world. And so when a government aggresses on another government because they want their natural resources, that's no different from an individual who's embezzling funds at his office because he has a gambling addiction, and he needs to find a way of getting more money to fulfill his gambling addiction. It's the same thing. So what you see, I mean, one of the things, and this is a major problem in our community, is that so many of our community think of the zalim as the ruler. But if you actually look at it, it's a dhulm all the way down. Mm-hmm. The ruler becomes a reflection of the state of the people. Kama takununa yuwalla alaykum. As you are, so are the people put over you. And if that hadith has some weakness, the great scholar Abu Bakr al-Tattushi said that I found it in the Qur'an. وَكَذَلِكَ نُوَلِّي بَعْضَ الظَّالِمِينَ بَعْضًا بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. Like that, we put some oppressors over other oppressors because of what they were doing. And so if we're not working on ourselves, if we're not removing the oppression from our own selves, I mean, just fasting alone, let's look at a few things about just oppressing the self. We now know that 78%, according to the studies that have been done, of hospitalized people with COVID were obesity. We also know that people that exercise 150 minutes a week, that's slightly over 20 minutes a day of moderate exercise, not even like really high level, but just walking briskly. Those people, they studied 50,000 COVID cases in the state of California, and they found that those people that did that were not hospitalized. Well, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Inna li jasadika alayka haqqa," that your body has rights over you. So one of the rights of your body is to eat well. Another is to exercise, because this is a trust that we've been given. It's a sacred trust. So you have to do all of these things. And if you don't do them, you must expect, because you've transgressed the limits. If you're eating more caloric intake than you actually need, you're transgressing limits. And so there's going to be repercussions. If you're not exercising, you're transgressing limits. You're a zalim to your own body. Now, also you could look at it, the Prophet ﷺ said, another reason we get plagues. And again, nobody wants to talk about this because it's just not politically correct. But another reason, according to our hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that the sexual deviancy never manifests in a people openly except they are afflicted with diseases and plagues. And he said clearly that tawa'in, which are plagues, and amrad, that were not in their previous peoples. So that's another reason to stay within the hudud. And out of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, according to our tradition, if people hide these things out of shame and conceal them, it's not going to affect the greater society. But when they shamefully, openly do these things, we believe. So people can say, oh, these are old wives' tales of religions. That's fine. You can believe that. But we see with our own eyes the reality of it. So whether you like it or not, whether you believe it or not, it actually happens to clearly be shown to us in the actions of people. And we see this. And that's why people that have a religious tradition have lower blood pressure, have less anxiety. They're healthier people. They're more giving. There have been many studies done showing that religious people are more charitable than other people. So even just from a pragmatic point of view, one would think that they would support religion, but they don't, because we're living in a culture that is so anti-religious, that is so secular, that is so hateful of belief. It's just quite stunning, the animosity. And you can see it in films, the way they make fun of religious people. You can see it in, Mr. Bean is a wonderful character, but when he does the kind of Anglican minister, it's quite sad. Now, unfortunately, and I have to say this, but many many religious people have made themselves the brunt of that type of comedic fodder. So this is a problem in our community. So I really feel like we as Muslims, we have a short time here, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the day of judgment is a day يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. On that day, it will be of no benefit to people unless they bring a peaceful heart, salim, a whole heart, a sound heart, a heart at peace. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of the meanings of salam is tuma'nina, which is quietude. So this idea of just being quiet within yourself, being unperturbed, being undisturbed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَعِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. That the servants of the merciful, and he used the merciful there. He could have used any other name, but he used the name the merciful. The servants of the merciful, when they pass by ignorant people, jahilun, and jahil is a beautiful word in Arabic because it doesn't just mean ignorant. It also means zealous and fanatical. So the jahil is somebody of hamiyya. They have this intense hamiyya. And so that's an example where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that when these ignoramuses pass them, these zealous people who try to goad them into reacting, because they love to do this, to get reactions from them. They simply say peace, peace, and again, that's a statement of Allah. But Allah is calling to the abode of peace. Your home should be a peaceful place. If you have violence in your home, if you have domestic violence towards your wife, and in some cases it's nowhere near as much, but in some cases violence towards the husband, it does happen more than people would like to talk about. But generally it's the women that are victims of domestic violence. If you have violence in your home, it is not a Muslim home. It's something else. Because the word in Arabic for home is maskan, which means the place of sakina. It's the place where a woman and children should feel safe. And the reason they feel safe is because they have a secure place to live in, and then they have a husband that's going to protect them. That's our tradition. So that's another problem. If you don't have peace in the home begins with peace inside. So if the husband is not at peace in himself, then he's going to be violent with those around them. And verbal abuse is as bad sometimes as physical abuse. And it can even be worse in some ways, because physical abuse, you can heal from those bruises. But very often emotional abuse, that constant abuse of somebody can really wear them down. And it will damper their faith in a way that's very troubling.